can see the checkered flag lying just ahead. And Michael Andretti has won at Vancouver, and he's won 5 of the last 9 IndyCar races. Michael Andretti, the 11th and final turn, the last turn of the racing season. And as the new champion, Michael Andretti takes Nick Fedoro's checkered flag. He takes the season, he takes the race. Michael Andretti, with an incredible record-breaking year, wins the title now by 34 points. 8 wins took Michael 13 races. Today, Unser Jr. can do it in 11 if he can win the Vancouver IndyCar Grand Prix. Beautiful waters of British Columbia, Canada. We're in the magnificent city of Vancouver for the Molson Indy Vancouver. I'm Paul Page with Derek Daly. A lot of stories here. The Penske cars have not attacked this track well, qualified poorly. Al Unser Jr. had a bad case of food poisoning and missed all of Friday.
And because of the food poisoning, he actually goes to the start of this race physically weaker than ever before. But he's not the only one struggling. Scott Goodyear, a bit like myself, battling the flu, but he's at temperatures in excess of 102 degrees.
Nigel Mansell this week confirmed what we all knew. He's going back to Formula One.
Now, we knew his IndyCar career was over. What we didn't know was over also is his personal relationship with his teammate Mario Andretti, particularly after the crash 2 weeks ago at New Hampshire.
And there's Robbie Gordon, the pole sitter, the second pole of his career, but can he win?
Well, we know he has the talent. Does he have the discipline? We think he does. He's convinced he does, but he has yet to prove it running from the front.
Many great stories will follow up this afternoon. Let's take a look at the way they've lined up here today. Robbie Gordon's on the pole. He has 2 career poles, both in Canada. Nigel Mansell is 0.15 of a second back. By starting second, Nigel makes the front row exactly the same as it was in Toronto. In row 2, it's Michael Andretti, who has won in 2 of his 3 starts here at Vancouver. And Scott Goodyear, his best start since sitting on the pole here last year. The third row, Teo Fabi, his best start since Detroit in 1992. And Paul Tracy, who looks for his second career win in Canada after a crash in qualifying. In row 4, Stefan Johansson in his backup car because of a crash in warm-up this morning. His 2 Vancouver starts produced career-best third-place finishes. And Al Unser Jr., the top of the Penske line, a 2-time winner here at Vancouver. In the 5th row, Jacques Villeneuve, the leading rookie contender, making the 3rd Canadian in the top 9. And Mario Andretti. Mario has never finished worse than 6th at Vancouver. Row 6, Adrian Fernandez, looking for his 3rd top 10 in a row. And Emerson Fittipaldi, who has never finished in the top 5 at Vancouver. In row 7, Mauricio Gugelmin and Scott Sharp. Row 8, Bobby Rahal and Mark Smith. The 9th row, Eddie Cheever and Ari Luyendyk. In row 10, Dominic Dobson, Raul Boisel. The 11th row, Mike Groff and Jimmy Vasser. Row 12, Marco Greco, who had problems starting here today, and Claude Bourbonnais. Row 13, Parker Johnstone and Willie T. Ribbs. And in the 14th row, Buddy Lazier and Alessandro Zampedri. So they are now maneuvering on the circuit, getting ready to fall into pace lap formation. Here on the line today, 102 laps, 168.6 miles, a very short race for the IndyCars, and the fuel window should open after the 23rd lap. And if they run green all the way, fuel could very definitely be a problem here today. Now the alignment of the front row begins. There's Robbie Gordon on the right of your screen. Look at how close Michael Andretti closes in. This is a very significant day for Michael. He must do very well here today if he expects to stay in the championship points. The final turn before the pit straight. They'll have to come single file here and then quickly realign. Off of that last turn, Gordon and Mansell. Now the pace picks up. There's the green. Michael Andretti drops into 3rd place, chasing Mansell. Scott Goodyear is 4th. Al Unser Jr. comes up to challenge on the inside of Fabi. And so does Emerson Fittipaldi. The Penske car is moving up very quickly here.
Watch the traffic jam here, under braking for this first gear hairpin on this first lap. Remember, tires are not warm enough yet.
A good jump by both Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. on the start. First, second, and third remain the same. Then Goodyear, then Fabi. Stefan Johansson in that backup car doing very well.
Fittipaldi very slow exiting that chicane. Boesel, look how far back he is. But everybody clips the curb on the inside. This is the modified chicane, much faster, much wider than what was used last year.
The first lap has now Fittipaldi coming in on an attack, as is the car of Paul Tracy. At the front of the field, Robbie Gordon leads across the line at the conclusion of the first lap. Paul Tracy, I look at him as he came up through the field. There he is on the attack now, moving on, Teo Fabi.
We're going to watch Johansson because you mentioned it earlier. He destroyed the car this morning in a warm-up crash. Very, very big crash, but so far this backup car seems to be to his liking.
Field now beginning to string out a bit, but boy, look at this fight as Al Unser Jr. is all over the back of Mario Andretti. Battle here is for 8th place.
Through the tunnel, not very dark, it's open on one side, but Al Jr. battling another liter of fluid put into his body through IV this morning by the doctors, by the medical doctors here up CART at Vancouver, but Al Jr. not physically up to par as he normally is.
Teo Fabi once again in battle with Paul Tracy. Battle for 5th place. Fabi holds him off. There's Scott Goodyear just ahead. Johansson just behind.
And he holds him off because he took that inside line, which is very unusual. Tracy maybe got to run down the inside, but he has to be careful. Tracy's already crashed a Penske this weekend, yesterday during qualifying, clipped the chicane, clipped the wall, took the left front suspension off. He's got to be careful.
This kind of performance is one of the reasons that you see a 3-car team being so successful, despite the fact that Al Unser Jr. missed all of Friday. They were able to use the 3 cars to their advantage on Saturday, going with different datum routes on each car. And the engineers report they got as much information out of yesterday as they would have had Al Unser Jr. been available all of Friday.
Look at Tracy, varies his line. He goes outside Fabi to have a look, then he goes inside. Looks as if he may have a faster car. But you tell me how you can squeeze 2 cars together between the apex of these concrete walls. That is what is unique about street racing. Being at the front of the start is such a huge advantage.
Now the point here, trying to make it up in these concrete canyons, is very difficult and very dangerous. Nigel Mansell back to 3rd now. Michael Andretti got around him. Scott Goodyear sits in 4th. Then Fabi alongside the stadium here. This area has created some problems for them in the past with changing weather conditions, because if it rains on the rest of the course, that sheltered section is, of course, always dry. It will also make a difference, I suspect, here in the weather. Bright sunlight in some cases, but then underneath the stadium always in shadow. And Goodyear is running a very, very soft compound this weekend. There's 3rd place, Nigel Mansell. Now 4th place, Scott Goodyear. Let's go pit side. Report on Nigel Mansell, Gary.
He started, of course, alongside Gordon in the front row. The first couple of laps, he reported to the crew on the radio that it was very stiff going through the gears. It has smoothed out, but there was concern on those first 2 laps. They don't think it's a problem at this point. Mansell settling in now to race pace, Paul.
Focus of the battle right now is really just behind Mansell. Goodyear, Fabi, Paul Tracy, Stefan Johansson, Mario Andretti, and Al Unser Jr. all running right together on the course. There they are. So Fabi tries a move on Goodyear.
That's the thing. You can have a little look down the inside, but unless you're all the way alongside the car that you're trying to pass, you can get yourself into deep trouble here. So Goodyear still taking advantage of that 2nd row starting spot and still runs up front. Oh, he locks up the right front.
Paul Tracy looking for an advantage on the back of Fabi at the same time.
That's one of the areas that you turn and brake at the same time, and those inside wheels are lightly loaded, and very often you'll see that inside front locking up. Look how bumpy those it is through that section there.
One of the problems they've been fighting all weekend. Jan Beekes.
Paul, you talked about the Penske chassis, and you talked about how Paul Tracy is involved in that battle. The Penske team really feels their problem lies in the area of the bumps, and when the car is on full tanks, the car works much better. It comes down to a suspension frequency problem. They're trying to find the right balance of tire pressure spring rate, and also shock absorber settings, Paul.
I'll tell you what, Jan, they are using every inch of this race course. We just watched Teo Fabi as he hopped way over the curb. He's, of course, in a Renard, which has proven to be very strong, but I don't imagine he can do that too much or too often, or he may have a car with difficulties. So Robbie Gordon, after 5 laps, is still out in front, followed by Michael.
Looking for a
By Toyota and their full line of quality cars and trucks. Toyota, I love what you do for me. And by Molson Ice from Canada, the land where ice was born. 8 laps are complete at the Molson Indy Vancouver. Here is the battle as everybody is crashing down. On 4th place, Scott Goodyear. The leader of the race is Robbie Gordon. In 2nd place, 5 seconds back is Michael Andretti. And Nigel Mansell runs alone behind Michael. In the Walker Racing pits, they keep track of the car. Remember that he led the first 12 laps at Toronto and then had tire problems that ran him off the course. There's 2nd place, Michael. 9 to 6 seconds now and behind the leader, and we got a glimpse of Nigel Mansell, who is 9 seconds back. On board now, Michael Andretti.
All the way down to the gearbox. First chicane coming up. Zampedri's in deep trouble here. Car is on fire, got to make it to a fire station. He obviously can't see how bad that is. He knows, he points backwards. Out of there as quickly as you can, boy.
A lot of oil burning on that car. Zampedri, remember, watch him. He was in a serious accident at the Michigan 500 and had a double fracture of his pelvis. This is the first time he's been back. So he doesn't walk all that well. He's been using a cane here at the track. To see him get out of the car that quickly, that's glad to see that. Full course yellow now, though. This situation wouldn't necessarily demand it.
Unless the oil has been dropped on the racetrack. I'm not sure this is the reason for the first full course yellow. We'll have to wait and see. But Robbie Gordon's 6-second lead over Michael Andretti suddenly evaporates with this full course yellow.
Well, the course marshals have done a spectacular job here to get that fire out. The IndyCar safety team is on the way. That's the reason they went full course. If they put a vehicle on the track now, they will go full course yellow. But the course marshals, most of them volunteers here, did a splendid job in getting that fire out. And Dr. Terry Trammell, the guy with a hat, going over to make sure that Alessandro Zampedri is okay. The car, though, Dale Coyne's car, obviously not in the best shape. A lot of fire at the back of the car, doing a lot of damage to the carbon fiber, and that can be very, very expensive. So under the full course yellow, Robbie Gordon will lead Michael Andretti, Nigel Mansell, Scott Goodyear, and Teo Fabi. We'll be back with more from the Molson Indy Vancouver. There's the reason for a full course yellow that is out, is they had to send a fire vehicle, a car safety vehicle, out on the course to get the fire out on Zampedri's car. So while we have time, let's go to the pits, beginning with Gary Gerald.
Paul, you had talked early about the concerns over fuel. This is a tough racetrack on fuel consumption. You're allotted only so much, as we well know, in IndyCar racing. But because you're constantly on and off the throttle, you have a tendency to burn more fuel. Teams have been not getting good fuel mileage this weekend. And already prior to this yellow, Nigel Mansell had gone into a fuel conservation mode. They had backed way down, trying to control the pace. We checked here with a crew from Michael Andretti, who had moved into 2nd place. They're very concerned. Mike Hall was just telling us a moment ago, if we get 1 or 2 more full course yellows, that's going to be a huge help to us. Now, for more on the fuel situation, let's check in further on pit road with Jan Vikas.
Well, Gary, the fuel situation also affects pit stops. What happens is this fuel tank behind me only has 59 gallons of fuel, but yet an Indy car holds 40 gallons. What that means is we're opening ourselves up now for timed pit stops. It normally takes 14 seconds to put fuel in an Indy car, a full 40 gallons. But now they can come in, do a 10 or 12-second time stop. We'll have shorter pit stops, but you have to stretch it to the absolute latest part of the window, which could be now as late as lap 67. Paul?
So fuel, very much a question here today, and this caution will help.